Okay.
Did he get it already?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this again.
You're so welcome.
I am very happy we're able to reschedule due to technical difficulties. But
Me too.
before we get started, I did want to shout out Cafe Aroma de Mexico. Um, my friend Braulia was my first guest, and she has this amazing coffee brand that everybody can purchase. I can put the link in the description below, and also the link is in the cafecito episode. But now that I've got that put aside, again, thank you so much for being here. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Katherine. I'm known as KATenacious on TikTok. And I recently went viral on TikTok for sharing my story about my now ex-husband, but when we were married, my husband's affair with my mother.
Yeah, that's insane. As we have talked about previously, and I feel like I know you so well now. I didn't know about you, or I didn't even know that this story was a thing up until your Susie Pesto story. And I'm really happy that you came out and put your story out there. I just wanted to ask and see if you wanted to share with your followers and also mine as well what led you to sharing your story.
Yeah, so I mean there's a lot of reasons why I finally decided to share my story. And everything that I went through happened 2 years ago. Next month will be the anniversary that I found out about the affair. And a lot of people have asked me, why are you telling your story now, 2 years later? And the main reason, there's multiple reasons, but the main reason is because I had actually a few months ago found out through the grapevine that a girl I went to high school with, who was several years younger than me, so I didn't know her, I just knew of her. She got pregnant in high school. She had twins. And I just recently found out a few months ago that her partner, I don't know if it's a boyfriend, husband, I'm not sure their status, but her partner that she had these twins with, she discovered a year ago that they were having an affair. And the post that she had made public a few months ago on Facebook was that it's been a year since I found out about their affair, and now my mother and my ex are public and open that they are in a relationship. And my heart just sunk when I heard about this. And I'm not friends with her on Facebook, so I just heard about it through other people.
Yeah.
And I just, oh, my heart broke for her because I know what that feels like, and there's not a lot of people that do. And when I was going through it, I was really lucky to have a good support system with friends and a couple of family members who were sympathetic and compassionate, but no one could empathize with what I was going through because they couldn't completely relate. And so even though I was surrounded by amazing people, I still at the same time felt really alone because no one really knew what I was going through. And so when I heard about this girl's story, oh, I so badly wanted to reach out to her, but at the same time, I didn't know if it would be appropriate for me to do that because again, I didn't really know her. And I didn't know about it on Facebook. I heard about it from someone who saw her Facebook post, and I just didn't think it would have been appropriate for me to reach out to her. So I figured, when I was going through it, I knew logically I wasn't the only person that's experienced this. It just felt like I was alone, but I knew logically I wasn't. And so if I've gone through this, if that girl I went to high school with has gone through this, I know that there's countless others that have too. And so I decided that, since I didn't feel comfortable directly reaching out to this girl I went to high school with, I figured maybe I could post something on TikTok. And if she or one other person sees my video and can relate to it, I can talk to one person and reach out to one person that can feel like they're not going through it alone. And
Yeah.
sure enough, after I posted it, it went insanely viral, way bigger than I ever fathomed it would have. And to this day, I've probably, not counting the comment section of my videos, but I've had personal direct messages, at least like 80 to 100 people reaching out to me saying, I've been through the same thing. And I
That's
knew that there were other people, but I could not believe how many people could relate to my story. So it's been really healing for myself and for those others to be able to talk to each other and share our stories and be able to empathize with each other.
Yeah. And knowing now and like hearing obviously your entire story, it's the fact that you at such a young age, because you're 26 now, right?
Yeah, I'm 26.
So this happened when you were 24?
Yeah.
That's insane. You're so young. And to me, you're just like a really old soul. And I'm sure even before any of this happened, I'm sure you were this very like well-grounded, put together person. I mean, even to start a family in your 20s, me as well. Not that I have kids, but I have a stepson and my husband. And to start a family at a young age, you really have to be more mature and living differently than most 20 something
Yeah.
live.
Yeah, when you bring a child into this world, hopefully you're the kind of parent that realizes you have to be completely selfless and put that child or those children before yourself, before your needs. And from as young as I can remember, I always knew that when I grow up I want to be a mom. In kindergarten all my friends wanted to be ballerinas and firefighters and doctors, and I wanted to be a mom.
Oh, you're really amazing. Um, so I did want to know also, how is co-parenting going with the father of your children?
Yeah, so, unfortunately, because we do share kids, I did not have the option to go zero contact and cut off all ties with him, but I wish I could have, like I did with my mother. So co-parenting is hard. Being a single mom is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, let alone co-parenting with somebody that betrayed me in such a malicious way. Unfortunately, divorce is very common in this generation, but it's one thing to separate because of irreconcilable differences, or growing apart and still maintaining a healthy relationship for your kids, but it's really hard to do that when the circumstances of my divorce were as tragic as they were. So I know so many people personally and impersonally that are product children that are products of divorce, and they grow up feeling guilt or blame or shame or resentment of themselves or towards their parents. And I don't want my children to have to grow up walking on eggshells and feeling like they have to choose a side between me and their father, because they don't deserve that. They're innocent in this situation. So, regardless of how I feel toward my ex husband, I choose to be graceful around him for the sake of my children, because one day they're going to grow up and know what happened,
Yeah,
and that's not a day I look forward to, but it's going to happen. And I want them, as they're processing such a grievous situation, I want them to look back at what their mama did, and I want them to be proud of me and not ashamed of me. And so I have to put my feelings aside because I'm putting my daughters first.
that's amazing. I'm sure they're going to be like so proud of you, but also so grateful because as somebody who had to hold such a huge burden or grudge for my mom in like the split between my parents, I just wish she had an ounce of thought of like what you're dealing with. I'm like, there's always something worse out there. There's always
Oh yeah, there's people out there who have it worse than me.
which is crazy for you to say. That is insane for you to say.
Hey, I'm alive and healthy, and my daughters are alive and healthy. So
That's very true. That is very true. I did want to ask, when all of this was going on, how, because I think you had covered it in the Susie Pesto story of
yeah.
how you found out.
Yeah, so I found out about the affair 2 days after Valentine's Day. The day after Valentine's Day, I had caught them out together in the middle of the night. Um, and at this stage in our life, my ex-husband, he had recently lost his job. He was fired. And so for extra income until he found a replacement job, he was door dashing
Okay.
to pay the bills. And he would do that any day, any hours. There wasn't like a set schedule of when he would go. He would just do it when he could. The way that those apps work is you can't just do it whenever you want to. If it's not busy enough with how many orders are coming into the app, it won't let you work. And
Yeah.
so when he would work, he would, let me know, hey, this is what I'm going to be able to work today from this time to this time. I should be home around this time. Um, and so that was kind of our routine for a couple of months. And there was one night that he did not come home from door dashing when he said he would come home. And sometimes on those apps, if like it gives you a time that you can work from this time to this time, but it gets busier and more orders start to fill in, sometimes it'll give the driver the option to extend an extra hour if they want to. And
Mhm.
if my ex-husband ever did that, he would let me know, but that was not the case that night. So I decided to reach out to him to get an ETA on when he would be home. And mind you, it was about like give or take 10 p.m. Um, and so when we were married, we most often communicated via FaceTime more than we texted or called each other when we weren't together. So I specifically FaceTimed him and he answered and I just said, hey, just wanted to get an ETA from you on when you'd be home. I wasn't sure how late you were planning on being out because you said you'd be home about 20 minutes ago. Do I need to have dinner ready for you? Am I okay to go to bed? I was just touching base with him. And he had said, oh yeah, sorry, I got distracted. Yes, I chose to extend the time. So sorry, I forgot to tell you, but I'm about to do my last order. And then I'll head home. I'm in X city, so I should be able to be home in about 20 minutes. And don't worry about dinner. I'll just hit a drive through on the way home. So I was like, oh, okay, sounds good. Um, and then he had said something along the lines of, all right, well, I'm gonna let you go because I'm driving, but I'll be home soon. And that comment that he made was odd for two reasons. Firstly, it was odd because while I understand it's not the safest choice, we have FaceTimed while driving in the past. We have those like
Yeah.
magnets your phone can go on. Um, and so it's not uncommon for us to have FaceTimed while driving. It's not like we did it all the time, but it did happen a handful or two. And so that was odd for him to say he wanted to hang up because he was driving, because that was not a behavior he had ever done before. And secondly, it was odd because since we were on a FaceTime call and I could see him, I could see that he wasn't driving. He was in his car, but it was parked. I could see in his driver side window that the buildings in the background, like they weren't moving. So he was parked. I can't even, maybe his seatbelt was even on off. I don't recall, but he wasn't driving. And so I called him out. I was like, you're not driving. I'm looking at you. You're literally parked. And he was like, oh, well, I pulled over when I saw you were calling, so I wouldn't be driving. And I was like, um,
That's so
okay, you don't do that, but okay, that's okay. And then I just started to really look at those buildings that I could see in the background, and I realized that I recognized them. Because one of them was like a movie theater with like the pink neon lights. Like you could tell it's a movie theater, it's nothing else.
Yeah.
And specifically recognized it as being the movie theater that's in the town we live in, not in the town he says that he was in.
Mhm.
So then I was like, okay, wait, hold up. Also, you're not in X city. You're right by the movie theater off of whatever road. Like I could see you. What's happening right now? Why are you lying? What's going on? And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm not in this town. I'm in that town. And I'm like, dude, I could turn around, like look behind you. I could see the building. like I'm I have eyes.
Yeah.
And finally he's like, oh, okay, you're right. I'm not in that city. I am by that movie theater. And I was like, yeah, I know. What's what's going on? And he had just said something like he had a really bad day that day and he's just been really stressed out since he got fired and trying to find a new job and he just has all this pressure on him and I just wasn't having a really good day. So I just decided to drive over here, just have some quiet time to myself before I came home. I was like, okay, well, first of all, I'm sorry that you're feeling the way that you are. And it makes me sad that you feel like you can't talk to me about that and express that. I at the time was dealing with really bad postpartum depression on top of regular depression. And so I was like, I can understand needing some time to yourself to just dissociate from life.
Mhm.
And I would hope that you would be able to trust me to confide in me and let me know that, because I totally support you in wanting to have some time to yourself. I get it. Um, but I told him, it makes me sad that you feel like you can't tell me that. And he was just like, yeah, yeah, I know, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll just go ahead and head home right now. I should be home in like 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I can't make out what was said, but I could hear a female's voice whispering, like in the audio. And I saw his face turn to like his passenger seat. And I was like,
No.
who are you with? And he goes, I'm no one. I'm not with anybody. And I'm like, who are you with? I'm not with anyone. Dude, I can see you and hear what's going on. And I just heard someone whisper and you just looked at them. So
Yeah.
what's going on here? I'm not with anybody. And then he hung up on me. And my heart just started to pound. And sadly, for the last like 3 to 4 months, I had already had some suspicions that there was an inappropriate relationship happening between my ex and my mother. There were just little behavioral things that didn't scream they're having an affair, but definitely made me really uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah.
instead of greeting each other with a side hug, she would greet him by wrapping her arms around his neck, and he'd swing her in a circle openly in front of me and open in front of our family. Like, it wasn't a hidden thing. So it was weird, but it didn't scream they're having an affair. Or it would be like the family would be over for a movie night and my mother would express, oh man, my feet hurt really bad today. So my husband would go get up, grab a bottle of lotion and start rubbing her feet.
My
Again, just
God.
in not hiding it, not acting like it's something weird or inappropriate, just out in the open. And so it'd be little things like that that definitely started to add up and increase my suspicion, but nothing that was like concrete 100%. I didn't catch them kissing. I didn't find text messages between them. So it wasn't anything that I could prove. And so I didn't confront either of them about the situation, because if I was wrong, that's a really big accusation to make if I'm wrong. And I didn't want to ruin my marriage or my relationship with my mother if I was just overthinking. Now in hindsight, I'm like, girl, you knew exactly what was going on. But at the time, no one wants to believe that that's happening. No matter who it is, no one wants to think that your partner's going to cheat on you, let alone with your mom. Like,
Uh,
that is something unbelievable. That's shit you see on Jerry Springer, rest in peace. It's not stuff you see in real life.
Completely forgot
And
about that.
yeah, so many people are like, you should go on Jerry Springer. And I'm like,
Where?
I kind of can't. But I used to think those shows were scripted. But now that I've gone through something like that, it's like, oh, maybe not. So anyway, I had just had these suspicions for a few months already. Um, and I just had this gut feeling that he was with my mother. My mom was supposed to come over earlier that night and canceled. And I just started putting two and two together, and I really started thinking that was the case. So when he had hung up on me and my heart just was going crazy, I took a minute to collect myself and I called him back. And he started accusing me of being crazy and not trusting him. And I've given you no reason to not believe me. You're crazy. And just gaslighting me and being just nasty and unkind. And I was like, okay, well, if you're not with anybody, show me the passenger seat. Prove me wrong. Show me
Yeah.
the passenger seat. And we kept going back and forth. I'm not showing you the passenger seat. You should trust me. Da 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 da. And I keep telling him, okay, well, then show me that I'm crazy. Prove it. And eventually he hung up with me again. And at that point, when he hung up with me again, I lost it and I just wept because again, it's like, there's no way this is happening. I had never had any inkling that my husband had ever been unfaithful prior to this situation. I had been with him for 10 years. We were high school sweethearts, and I trusted him.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is not happening. This is not real life. I am dreaming. This is a nightmare. There's no way that this is happening. There's no way. And I had a full blown panic attack that probably lasted, I don't know, a minute or two, but it felt like eternity. And finally I collect myself enough to FaceTime him again. And so he answers, and we keep going at each other. And the father's like, okay, fine, I'll show you. And
Oh,
he turns
yeah.
his phone to the passenger seat and it's empty. And I say, so you just think that, in the amount of time that you just hung up on me for the second time, that she didn't just hop out of your car and she's hiding outside right now?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, what? Now you want me to get out of the car and show you? Like, you're
Yep.
insane. And just, men.
Yeah.
And so I just knew. And so he's finally was like, you know what? I'm coming home. I'll be home in like 10 minutes. Okay. And he hangs up on me again. But I just knew. And so I decided that I would call my little sister because she still lived at home at the time.
Mm.
Um, and so I called her and she answered. And I said, sister, I need you to do me a favor. And I need you to go downstairs to our parents' bedroom. And I need you to tell me if mom is home. And she's like, oh, why? What's going on? And I was like, I just really need you to do me this favor. Please, discreetly go check it out, and she's there. I really need you to do this for me. And she goes, okay, I will, but like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And so finally I just tell her, I said, I think mom is having an affair with my husband. And she goes, what? Katherine, no, no. Oh my gosh, like, there's no way that's happening. Why do you think that? They would never do that to you. Like, your husband loves you, and it's mom. Like, that would never happen. And I have to interrupt her, and I'm like, sister, just please go check. Please,
God.
please go check. And then she goes, okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. And she said, a few hours ago, your husband came by, and he came inside and um offered to offer to mom to go door dashing with him, which I guess, yeah, I thought was kind of odd and weird. But side note, our family was not normal, so it wasn't that weird.
Okay.
And my father actually walked my mom to my husband's car that night. Like, my father knew that they were gonna go door dashing together. Like, it was just
Oh
like a
my gosh.
whatever thing. And so my little sister didn't really think much of it. She thought, like, okay, this is a little odd, but like, our family's done weirder things.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess that my mother and or my husband had said to my sister, hey, please, if you wouldn't mind, please don't tell Katherine that we're doing this. Katherine has expressed to her husband that she's really been missing him lately, now that he's been working so many DoorDash hours since he lost his job. And she, had said to him that she would really like to one day maybe have me or somebody else babysit the twins so that she and her husband could go door dashing together, just so they could spend some time together. And we don't want her to be upset that, like, I'm going right now, because it was just a last minute thing. We don't want to hurt her feelings. So could you just not tell her? And again, my sister thought, like, okay, that's weird. But she had no thoughts in her head about an affair happening.
Yeah.
That was not even a thought in her mind. So she thought, like, okay, that's kind of weird, but yeah, I guess I don't want to hurt Katherine's feelings either. So okay. But now that I was calling her, telling her, I think mom's sleeping with my husband, she's like, whoa, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. And so she's like, this is what's happening. Like, yes, they're together, Katherine. They're together, but they're not having an affair. Like, they're just door dashing. And she really believed that. Um, my sister was, very young, and at the time very naive. And so she really genuinely believed that there was no malicious activity happening. And so, she's trying to comfort me and convince me that it's not happening, but I knew. that was confirmation that, okay, I am not crazy. They're
Yeah.
together. And I wasn't about to dump more than I already did on my little sister. So I was just like, thank you so much for telling me. I love you so much. Bye.
Yeah.
And now I was like, okay, what the fuck do I do now? And so I decided to call my mom. And she didn't have an iPhone, so I couldn't FaceTime her. So I just called her and it rang twice and went to voicemail, which told me two things. It told me that it's not like her phone was off because it would have gone straight to voicemail without ringing. And it's not like she missed the call because it would have rang a lot more than two times. So I know that she declined my call. So I called her again and 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 I called her 8 times before she finally answered. And you would think that if your daughter, whom you know is home alone with infant twins that are preemie babies and one is medically compromised, you would think that if your daughter called you 8 times in the middle of the night, there might be an emergency. So maybe when you finally see those calls and you answer, you'd be like, oh my gosh, is everything okay? What's going on? But of course, that was not how she answered the phone. When she answered the phone, she said, what, Katherine?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
And I'm just still weeping. And through my tears and my quivering, shaking voice, I told her, I said, Mom, just tell me why. And then I can hear in the background my husband saying, put on speaker, put on speaker. And so I hear her muffling her with her phone. And then finally she goes, what? What did you say? I said, just tell me why. And she says, why what? And I said, you know what? And she said, why I'm with your husband?
Mm.
And I said, yes. And then she proceeded to tell me some sob story about how she had a really bad day today. And you knew I had a bad day today because I had told you about it and you never reached out to get a check on me, but he did. He had come over and just kind of came to check on me and to see how I was doing and offered to get me out of the house to have some fresh air. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh my gosh.
And so because I knew I was on speaker, I addressed my husband by name and I said, before you take her home, you both need to come to our house so we can have a conversation. And we hung up. And now, as if I wasn't already freaking out before, I thought my heart was gonna explode because now I just realized, oh crap, I'm about to confront them, and I'm alone. um, and I don't feel safe or comfortable doing that. So I was like, what do I do? I'm not gonna call my little baby sister again because she doesn't deserve to have that put on her. And at the time, I didn't have any friendships that were close enough that I felt I could call or that lived close enough that they'd be able to get there before my mother and husband showed up, knowing they were only a few minutes away.
Hmm.
And so I had decided to call my grandmother, um, mostly because she lives in the subdivision next to the one I lived in. And so she was very close.
Yeah.
And two, that morning, the day that this all happened, just hours prior in the morning, my grandmother had come over and she had expressed to me that she had noticed some weird, inappropriate behavior between my mother and my husband. And she said, you know, I don't know that there's something that's happening. There's just been some weird things I've noticed. And she had shared that one time when my husband went to greet my mother one day, he referred to her as precious. To which my grandmother thought, that's a weird thing to call your mother in law. And there was another time a couple weeks prior where my grandmother had gone over to my parents' house for some reason. I can't remember what for, but while she was there, I guess my husband had stopped by unannounced to bring my mother a gift. He didn't bring a gift for anybody else in my family who lived there, but he brought a gift for my mother. And that was nothing that my grandma just thought was that's a little weird. But
A little,
finally,
to say
hmm
the least. A little, to say the least.
yeah, yeah. And so she's like, you know, it says that Scream are having an affair, but even she was like, this is weird. But finally, the reason why my grandma decided to talk to me, instead of bringing something up that, again, you might be stirring something up if it's not even true, I guess my older sister had gone to my grandmother and said, I think mom and Catherine's husband are having an affair. What do I do? And my sister had noticed physical inappropriate behavior between my mother and my husband.
Wow.
And so my grandmother had given my sister the advice of, the truth always comes to light. So I don't know that it would be wise to confront Catherine, your mom or Catherine's husband, because if we're not right, that's a big accusation to make. But the truth always comes out. So I wouldn't say anything. But then when my grandmother was sharing this stuff with me, and I finally was able to verbalize with her, like, I've been seeing stuff like this too. So I'm not crazy. It's not just me. It it sucked knowing that other people were seeing things, but at the same time, I felt validated. And
Yeah.
so then when I found out, like that morning, my grandmother shared this stuff with me. My husband was being sketchy on the FaceTime call. I called my little sister. She confirmed that they're together. I just knew. I knew. And so I was like, okay, I can't confront them alone. So I called my grandmother, and thank God she answered, because she goes to sleep very early and normally sleeps with her phone on silent in her kitchen. She doesn't even have it in her bedroom. And by the grace of God, she somehow heard the buzzing from her kitchen and answered the phone. And I couldn't even tell you every word that I said. I was a frantic, crying, screaming mess. But she just said, I'll be there in 2 minutes. And so she got there, and I just, again, quickly was like, we were right. We were right. I think they're having an affair. I just called them right now, and I found they're together because I called sister and she told me that they're together, and now they're on the way, and I'm about to confront them, and I don't know what to do. And and then my mother and husband walked through the door. And as soon as they came in, they both tried to come hug me. To which I put my hands out and I said, don't fucking touch me.
Yeah.
Um, and they were very upset that I would not accept their hug. And they both sat on either side of me on the couch and just kept making excuses for why they were together. And even my grandmother at one point pitched in, and she was like, okay, daughter, if you were having such a bad, horrible day, why is your son-in-law the person you're going to? Like, you should be going to your spouse. Or if you're upset with your spouse, you should be going to me, your mom,
She knew.
or a friend of yours, or a therapist.
Yeah.
But you should be going to your son-in-law.
Yeah. She knew what she was doing.
Yes. And then at one point, my little sister, who I had just gotten off the phone with, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes prior, in her mind, she's thinking, oh my gosh, I just hung with my sister. And she thinks our mom and her husband are having an affair, and she's at home alone, probably spiraling. I'm going to go be with her and comfort her and convince her that this is not happening. So she showed up. I didn't even know that she was going to show up. And she walks into a confrontation between me and our mom and my husband, and grandma's there. And so my sister's just like, oh my God, what's happening? And she just walks across the couch and squishes herself between where I'm sitting and behind me in the couch. So she is just like behind me, and she's just holding me from behind and just comforting me. And eventually, at some point, I look my husband point blank in the eye and I say, are you fucking my mom? And with a stone cold look on his face, he says, no. Not what? No. Oh my God. No. He wasn't shocked at all, like one would be if they were accused of something so horrendous that they didn't do. And so, regardless of his answer, I knew the truth. And then I looked to my mother and I said the same thing. Are you fucking my husband? And she says, no, I would never cross that boundary. But I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
And I knew, and regardless of what they would say, I knew the truth. And so finally, I told my mother that she could get the hell out of my house. My husband had offered to take her home. And then my grandmother was like, no, you stay here with your wife and your infant babies. I will take her home. My sister hung out for a little while to make sure that I was okay.
Yeah.
Um, and my husband ended up going to sleep, and I sat on the couch until the sun came up. And the next day, my mother ended up coming clean to my father, her husband, about it. And my husband ended up finally coming clean to me about it the next day. And we divorced a few months later.
Wow. That's I can't even imagine being in your shoes at that moment. But I'm glad that you were able to just pick up, walk away from the situation, and it just makes you that much more stronger. And here you are.
Here I am. It's such a tragic story. And it's kind of like what we said earlier. There's so many people in the world that have it worse off than me, better off than me. It's so easy to play that game of who has it worse and who has it better. But honestly, really, it's just different. Everybody's life is just different. And if sharing my story can empower somebody else to share theirs, like that makes this worth it. I had a gal DM me a couple weeks ago saying that the same thing happened to her. Her mother had an affair with her husband 14 years ago. And
Wow.
to this day, she has never shared her story because she has felt shame about it. And a lot of people in her family didn't believe her. They thought she was making it up. So she's just kind of kept it to herself. And she had told me, after seeing you post your stories, like it has made me like feel rid of my shame and my guilt because I didn't do anything wrong. They did. And so then she ended up sharing her story. And it's just been like a domino effect of, not carrying guilt over something that you didn't do.
Right.
So I'm so thankful for you for giving me another outlet to share my story on and hopefully reach other people so that, if they can relate to any part of my story, that they can know that they're not alone.
Right. No, and thanks for being here and telling your story. And where can people follow now your journey going forward and see like what you're up to these days and what you'll be doing in the next year or in the next 5 years? Where can people
Yeah. So when I posted my story on TikTok, I did not think it was going to blow up to the extent that it did. I am so not a content creator. I'm not tech savvy. I'm still figuring out how the TikTok app works. But of course, I put my story out there so people have lots of questions that I haven't answered about it yet. And I'm doing my best to continue to post more additions to my story and answering questions because I'm an open book about it. So if you have questions about my story, like I said, I'm an open book. You can find me on TikTok at KATenacious. Um, and as far as where I'll be in 5 years, gosh, I don't know. I wish I had some amazing, inspiring answer, but kind of the way my life is going right now is I kind of have to take it day by day. And honestly, sometimes minute by minute. I guess I just hope that in 5 years from now that my children are thriving and happy and healthy and that I'm thriving and happy and
Yeah.
healthy. I hope that in 5 years from now I have more confidence and more joy.
Well, I can't wait to see that. And I am a follower and I'll continue to be a follower.
Yay, me too. Back to you.
Thanks. I hope that in a year from now we can redo this and see where we're at. And then
Oh,
it'll
that'd
be
be so
my turn to tell you
yes.
something.
Oh, I would love that. That sounds amazing.
Well, thank you again.